Picture a Russian garrison sitting in a strip of land it does not really control, guarding Soviet shells in a depot from another era, listening to speeches from Moscow that sound powerful and maps that say otherwise. About 1,200 to 1,500 Russian troops remain in Transnistria, but they are stuck in a pocket between pro-EU Moldova and wartime Ukraine, with no reliable rotation route, no safe reinforcement path, and shrinking political room to matter. The remarkable part is this: NATO did not blast this force into irrelevance. The European Union and Romania did it with borders, energy and law, paperwork, pipelines, border posts, a cage built one bar at a time. That is the big thing in this story. Transnistria used to be sold as a Russian bridgehead on Europe's edge, a frozen conflict that let Moscow keep one boot inside Moldova and one hand on the region's throat. Now that bridgehead looks more like a cul-de-sac, and by the end of this video, you understand why this matters far beyond one separatist sliver of land. Because if Brussels and Bucharest can neutralize a Russian enclave without firing a shot, then the whole grammar of post-Soviet coercion starts to change. Frozen conflicts stop looking permanent. They start looking expensive, brittle, and strategically obsolete. To understand the cage, you have to rewind. After the Soviet collapse, Transnistria broke away from Moldova in a short war in the early 1990s. Russia kept troops there, wrapped part of the force in peacekeeper language, and anchored the rest around the huge Kobazna ammunition depot, where old Soviet munitions still sit in massive quantities. For years, that arrangement gave Moscow leverage out of all proportion to the enclave's size. Transnistria was not just a local dispute. It was a pressure valve, a smuggling corridor, a legal grey zone, a standing reminder that Russia could freeze Moldova's future whenever it wanted. Then came the first real lock on the cage. On February 28, 2022, just days into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Kyiv shut the checkpoints on the Transnistrian segment of the Ukraine-Moldova border until further notice. That mattered more than a lot of dramatic headlines did later, because it meant the eastern gate slammed shut almost immediately after the war began. No easy military transit, no casual cross-border movement into the enclave's rear, no pretending that Transnistria still sat inside a permissive Russian neighborhood. One frontier changed, and the whole geometry changed with it. This is where the landbridge died. Back in 2022, there was loose talk about Russian forces reaching Odessa and linking up with Transnistria from the east. That fantasy looked dramatic on television. On an actual map, it depended on Russia doing several very difficult things in sequence: defeating Ukraine in the south, surviving the Odessa approaches, securing a corridor, and then sustaining it under constant threat. None of that happened. Odessa held, Ukraine fortified, and the Russian force inside Transnistria was left exactly where it had always been physically, but in a completely different strategic reality. Same soldiers, same depot, totally different century. Now zoom in on the men inside that pocket. The force is often described as a threat, but today it looks far more like a stranded liability. Reuters reported that Transnistria's Russian troop presence is around 1,500, while Moldovan officials and outside analysts have repeatedly stressed that much of the contingent is small, locally composed, and constrained by the impossibility of reinforcement through hostile or controlled territory. In practical terms, this is not a springboard for a major offensive. It is a static force, guarding symbols, old stockpiles, and a political narrative that has lost most of its logistical foundation. Moscow's television still talks in imperial verbs. The geography has switched to nouns: depot, border, dead end. If you're enjoying this video, hit that like and subscribe button right now. The second bar of the cage was energy, and this one may have hurt more than the border closures, because it hit daily life, industry, and political leverage all at once. On January 1st, 2025, Russian gas transit through Ukraine stopped when the transit arrangement expired. That ended a historic route that had survived even the first years of the full-scale war. For Transnistria, the effect was brutal. Heating and hot water were cut. Industry largely shut down. The Kuchjerigan power plant switched from gas to coal just to keep some electricity flowing. In geopolitics, people often imagine sieges as artillery and smoke. Sometimes the real siege is molecular. Sometimes it is the moment the gas does not arrive. And here is the irony Moscow hates. The end of Russian gas transit did not restore Russian leverage over Transnistria. It exposed how dependent Moscow's own client was on a route controlled by people Russia was trying to destroy. The European Union stepped into that vulnerability with emergency support. In late January 2025, Brussels offered an immediate €30 million emergency package for Moldova's energy crisis, explicitly including support related to the humanitarian emergency in Transnistria. In early February, the Commission and Moldova agreed a broader, 2-year energy independence and resilience strategy worth €250 million for 2025 support, aimed at decoupling Moldova from insecure Russian supply and integrating it further into the EU energy market. That is the energy bar in the cage. Russia turns off the tap, and Brussels uses the crisis to build a different plumbing system. No corridor, no gas, no rotation. That is the logistics. Now here is the politics. For 2 decades, the EU and Moldova, with Ukraine alongside, built institutions that do not look dramatic on a battlefield montage, but are devastating to grey zone influence. The EU Border Assistance Mission, EUBAM, was created to modernise shared border control and contribute to a peaceful settlement of the Transnistrian conflict. Over the years, it supported customs coordination, information sharing, and integrated controls on the Moldova-Ukraine frontier. Even after UBAM's mandate concluded in late 2025, the architecture it helped build did not disappear. The habits stayed, the procedures stayed, the logic stayed. Joint control became muscle memory. That is why joint posts and one-stop checks matter. They replace fog with receipts. They replace ambiguity with databases. In December 2023, Moldova and Ukraine signed protocols to expand joint control at additional crossing points. UBAM's own reporting highlighted the steady push to improve joint control across the shared border, including the strategically sensitive central segment long tied to Transnistria. This is boring in the best possible way. Border stamps are not cinematic. Customs harmonization does not trend. But that is exactly how you suffocate the business model of a grey zone. Smuggling hates paperwork. Proxy influence hates transparency. Frozen conflicts thrive on loopholes. The EU's talent is turning loopholes into forms. Then came the legal bar. In January 2026, Moldova moved to denounce key founding agreements of the Russia-led Commonwealth of Independent States. Reuters reported that Chisinau had ceased taking part in CIS activities since 2023 and was now formally confirming the denunciation of agreements underpinning the bloc. Moldovan officials framed this as clarifying the country's legal status and strengthening its European orientation. This was not some giant theatrical break with fireworks and marching bands. It was more serious than that. It was institutional unplugging. Russia has always loved legacy structures because they let old influence survive in new borders. Moldova is now methodically cutting those wires. The EU track matters here too. Moldova applied for EU membership in March 2022, got candidate status in June 2022, and formally opened accession negotiations in June 2024. By late 2025, the European Commission said Moldova had significantly advanced on its accession path, despite continuous hybrid threats and destabilization attempts. That means every new reform chapter, every legal approximation, every technical alignment with EU rules is not just an administrative exercise. It is another bar in the cage around the Russian military presence in Transnistria. Moscow kept the enclave alive by keeping Moldova half in and half out of Europe. Chisinau's answer is simple: remove the half. Now to Romania's move and why it landed so hard. In January 2026, President Maia Sandu said that if there were a referendum on unification with Romania, she would vote yes, arguing that it is increasingly hard for a small democracy like Moldova to resist Russian pressure alone. Soon after, Romanian Prime Minister Ilie Bolojan also said he would vote yes in such a referendum. Romanian President Nicolae Dan struck a more cautious line, stressing that Moldova is sovereign and that any such future depends on the will of Moldovan citizens, while strongly backing Moldova's EU path. That distinction matters. There is no referendum, there is no announced timetable, but the Overton window moved. A scenario once treated as romantic nostalgia is now discussed as strategic statecraft. Why is that brutal for Moscow? Because it changes the endgame. If Moldova one day unifies with Romania, the whole Moldovan landmass would move at once into EU and NATO territory, through the legal and political mechanics of union with an existing member state. Russia's favorite trick in places like Transnistria has always depended on time. Freeze the conflict, keep the target state weak, preserve ambiguity, wait for Western fatigue. Unification talk attacks that clock. It tells Moscow that the frozen conflict is not a permanent geographic fact. It is an anomaly, sitting inside a larger political current that is moving west. For the Kremlin, that is the nightmare. Not tanks crossing a river, a map changing its meaning. And Romania is not just making statements. It has become one of the East Flank's key logistics platforms. Reuters reported that Romania has become Ukraine's biggest alternative grain export route, with major investment flowing into the port of Constanța and rail infrastructure to expand capacity. Bucharest has openly described Constanța as a strategic Black Sea logistics hub. At the same time, the Black Sea's importance to NATO and EU security has surged since Russia's invasion, with Romania sitting in the middle of that equation as a frontline state, a transport node, and a security actor bridging the Balkans, the Danube, Moldova, and the Western Black Sea. That matters because logistics is leverage. The state that moves grain, fuel, armor, and information shapes the battlefield before the battlefield exists. So what happens if Moscow tries to break the cage? This is the part where Russian options start to look less like plans and more like dares. Airlifting meaningful reinforcements into Transnistria would mean flying through or near airspace dominated by wartime Ukrainian defenses and a tightly monitored regional picture. An amphibious move through the northwestern Black Sea would run into the same ugly realities that already doomed Russian dreams around Odessa: surveillance, coastal defenses, mines, and geography. A land thrust to Odessa first would mean winning a campaign Russia already failed to win in far better circumstances. Even energy blackmail has boomeranged, because each cut gives the EU another excuse to finance alternatives and strip out dependence. The rescue menu exists only on paper, and paper, for once, is exactly what beat Moscow here. This is how you neutralize a Russian enclave in the 2020s. You make it militarily irrelevant before a shot is fired. You close the border routes. You harden the neighboring coast. You integrate customs. You rewrite the legal environment. You build alternative energy. You align the vulnerable state with the EU. And then, once the enclave is already trapped inside that web, you shift the political conversation from "how do we manage this frozen conflict forever?" to "what does the map look like after it stops being frozen?" That is not glamorous. It is much more dangerous than glamorous, because it works. There is also a human angle that matters, and it matters a lot. A caged army does not have to mean caged civilians. During the 2025 energy crisis, the EU package was explicitly designed to tackle the humanitarian emergency affecting both banks of the Dniester, including people in Transnistria who suddenly found themselves without normal heating and electricity. Moldovan officials and European institutions were not trying to prove that the West could make ordinary people suffer more efficiently than Gazprom. They were trying to do the opposite: separate sovereignty from punishment. That is a powerful narrative weapon, because the Kremlin story is always that if you leave Moscow's orbit, you freeze. But when Brussels helps keep households functioning, while Moscow's own gas leverage collapses, that story starts to rot from the inside. And those households are not abstract. Transnistria is full of overlapping identities, mixed media diets, and practical survival instincts. Moldovan data published in January 2026 indicated that more than 337,000 residents of the Transnistrian region hold Moldovan passports. Across Moldova more broadly, hundreds of thousands also hold Romanian citizenship, reflecting the deep social ties across the Prut. So the civilian reality is messier than the propaganda posters. People may watch Russian television, speak different first languages, carry multiple passports, and still mainly want the lights on, wages paid, and their children out of danger. Moscow thrives when it can turn that complexity into paralysis. Chisinau and its European partners are trying to turn it into legitimacy. And that may be the biggest change of all. For years, Transnistria looked like proof that Russia could always keep one shard of empire embedded inside a neighbour. Now it increasingly looks like proof that those shards can be fenced, regulated, outgrown, and politically overtaken. Slowly, methodically, almost insultingly calmly. Not with a shock assault, but with a long administrative strangulation, backed by economic diversification and alliance gravity. No Hollywood ending. Just a map that gets harder and harder for Moscow to use. So circle back to the image we started with. A small Russian garrison in Transnistria, still armed, still there, still useful to propaganda, but increasingly useless to strategy. The bridgehead has become a cage. Romania helped move the politics. The EU built the bars. Ukraine locked the eastern gate. And the lesson for Moscow is savage in its simplicity. The enclave you thought gave you leverage can become a prison for your own influence. The question now is not whether Transnistria still looks frozen on a map. It is whether Brussels and Bucharest have just shown a template for every other frozen conflict Russia still treats as a reserve weapon. Because if this can be done here without a shot, then the next war Moscow loses may be one that never visibly begins.